Okay, so our next area of discussion is this one. And this is, well, we're going over into Europe. And we talked about this last week. And we talked about the people in France and how they were upset and rioting and burning Paris down in France. And we all thought it was regarding more about retirement age. Well, I did some more homework after the show, and unfortunately, I didn't get it done before the show. But it turns out that the French are really upset. Some of them are really informed, and they were going after the BlackRock building, which is interesting. It was targeted in their rioting. Also, the other things here, and we'll focus on that one. So first off, let's talk about France. France is like Europe is upset, but they're targeting upset. And now we hear France, and I didn't have a link for this one, but we know that Macron was speaking with Xi, and they could be on the table. Like, I've heard rumors that France could be one of the next countries that join or said they want to join BRICS. So, Patrick, what have you heard from our French friends over there?
So actually, it was funny enough. I was watching a show the other day talking about how it might be cheaper to travel to Bora Bora because of this, because they're a French Polynesian island. So I'm just really happy about that.
There's a positive.
Thank you. I knew I could bring one in somewhere.
Good job.
Dude, I don't know. I mean, they kind of see exactly what the rest of us are seeing. Like, all we're noticing here is that the things that we're seeing here stateside are not local. It's a geopolitical global event happening everywhere against banking systems and the fraud that they come with. We want change. And there's a lot of entitled little brats out there who grew up thinking that they could do whatever they want. And now they're going to just do it. It's going to be crazy. So my warning to everyone is, when it starts happening, don't go out looking for being a Rambo. Don't go out trying to buy groceries at that time. That is not the time to go stock your grocery carts. Okay.
Yeah.
Stay home.
Yeah. Dylan, any comments on our European friends over there, France or other?
Just that, if this is happening in France, it just kind of, if you think about America and how it was founded, we were a bunch of disagreeable, gritty, hard-nosed people, right? Like we didn't put up with a lot of stuff. And it's kind of unfortunate that now the protests that we see people do are just because someone gets called the wrong name, right? Someone used the wrong word. And that's what it is. Instead of like protesting this kind of stuff that's happening here, right? This is like the real oppression, that financial slavery and financial oppression is happening to everyone. It just seems like we've been so domesticated, made so docile, that are so lazy or apathetic to these things that people just don't care. And that's kind of scary and kind of sad to see that not happening in America more. And not people not standing up and voicing their opinions and saying, hey, this isn't right. Because until that kind of stuff really starts happening, what's the incentive to change? If people just keep going along with it, like if Budweiser's stock bounces back and, now they're hitting all-time highs or whatnot. I know that they're not right now, but, they could in the future, because people are like, I don't care. It's over. Whatever. That's 2 weeks ago news. That's kind of sad and kind of scary when you think about it, because what does that imply? That implies that like the powers that be can get away with just about anything if there's no one to stand up against them, or if the only place is France, because France is important, but it's not that important.
Yeah, and we have to be selective, because we could
Clydesdales again.
We could literally make the show 2 or 3 hours, but we have to be selective on what we're touching. But just over in Europe, like, I think Europe has felt more pain. I think people do things for 2 reasons. 1, they really want to, or they enjoy it, or 2, because they have to. They are forced to. And I think that's where they're at in France right now. And that's where they're getting in a lot of Europe, because everything costs way more over there. They made energy really hard to get. Germany is, I think, cutting their last 3 nuclear plants are being shut off this month. It's getting really difficult just to put normal food on the table. So when people can't make ends meet, they lash out. That's what happens. That's why you start to see it. We're starting to see elements of that in the U.S. Like crime goes up, or certain elements go up, and we have work issues or layoffs. But it's not the huge pain point yet. But I think Europe is going to happen first there. But let's turn the page to Asia. So we got lots going on in Asia. And let me share a couple quick stories there, and then we'll talk about our friends across the Pacific there. So first off, let me start with this story here. So, where'd it go? There it is. Okay, so there's the map of Taiwan. It's not the best map. Thank you, CNN. As usual, did quality work here. But this is China, and this is Taiwan, and you can see that they're basically just surrounding them. And why do we care about Taiwan? Well, first, Taiwan used to be part of China, and now they've broken off, much like Ukraine broke away from Russia. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But Taiwan happens to make a lot of semiconductor chips that we need for everything. They make 60% of the global supply of chips and 80 to 90% of the important ones, like the really complicated ones. So that's important. And now we'll talk about this as well, like understanding why people went into, why there is conflict probably on the horizon, as we've heard from our 45th president. This is most likely. China's going to go into Taiwan. What is it about? Is it about similar to Ukraine, where there could be biological labs that are there, and is someone hiding something? Could that come out and be surfaced again? So lots to discuss on this topic. Patrick, why don't you lead off and talk about Taiwan for a moment?
So I wouldn't say that like I would be an expert in this one, Jeff, but what I would say is like it does scare me when I start to see a lot of the posturing that we're seeing happen again, because this is like, it does feel like a repeat. And it just makes me sad for the people who might get hurt there again. So I just hope that people are ready and they see what's on the border over there happening. And, praying for the people of Taiwan, hope that it's not crazy for them right now. And I hope it kind of de-escalates and doesn't turn up to be another Ukraine.
Dylan, any comments on this one?
Yeah, I mean, we've been hearing about this for at least the past year, maybe a little bit more, about how China wants Taiwan, and they've surrounded. This is not the first time that China has, kind of put their military might on display around the island of Taiwan. I think it's unfortunate that we've put ourselves in a situation where there's one small country that is pretty vulnerable to any sort of physical assault, that produces 60% of semiconductor chips. Right. I'm sure that, and I don't know exactly why. So like Patrick, I'm not an expert on exactly why Taiwan is responsible for that much. Like, what strategic advantage does Taiwan have that makes it to where they're producing?
Their labor is cheap, so they get to make a lot of chips for very cheap, and they've been like the center of production for a long time. A lot of stuff is made in China and Taiwan.
Yeah,
and they happen to make, like, I think even more of the tool heads, like 200 millimeter tool heads that are used for wafer technology stuff. Like, I think that's probably the answer. It's just the cheaper labor.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a really big vulnerability in that supply chain.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, that's something that needs to be fixed, because if it's fixed, they weren't such a big player, or there are alternative options, then it wouldn't be as big of a deal. I mean, it'd still be a big deal, but like, it wouldn't be as key of a place to take. And of course, like we've talked about this before, when the power starts shifting, then all the players try to grab as many of the assets as they can. If they can take an asset from another player to solidify their power for the years going forward, they're going to do it.
China already did. They bought up all of the wafer technology tool heads, all of it.
This has been a problem this has been a problem for 30 years. Like I spent a lot of my career before I left most of it in the tech sector. And like when they started outsourcing to other countries, first Mexico, then Asia, because labor was cheaper, I said, well, what about these risks? What about like the hidden costs? So like, imagine you have like if you put all your eggs in one basket and you have one place where everything comes from, what happens if they don't like you anymore? What happens if forget the cost of sending someone over there to fix something? So if you're saving 10%, you have to make tons of volume for this to make even cost-effective sense. But a lot of people don't understand that. But the U.S. used to make a lot of these things, like Texas Sinclair, Texas Semiconductor. There was huge in Texas that we would make lots of chips. And there were companies used to have locations in the U.S. and Mexico. And then when they wanted to make more production, they thought the product was ready, then they'd move it over to Asia and get more volume there. But then you had two facilities that could build. You could build it in, say, Milpitas, California, or you could build it in Texas, or you could build it in Guadalajara. And you'd have a lot less risk than having it in Beijing or name. I'm losing. I forget the Chinese cities I used to know, but or Japan or Taiwan or Thailand or Malaysia or Singapore, all these countries that they target now because of the low labor rates. But this is what you get when you have these supply chain issues. So now you're going to see it could impact electronics. So if this happens, I mean, the prices of electronics are going to skyrocket. I mean, phones, everything that we use, whatever device you're watching us on now. And by the way, please like, share, subscribe. Really appreciate that. But these are things that like people don't like, that are just these hidden costs that they're not aware. But you've got all these different reasons for conflict and all these different reasons that are out there. And there's the geopolitical risk. There's could this be like other kinds of war or surreptitious wars? There's a lot to discuss on that. But all these different wars, all these different attack vectors that now exist because the globe has gotten smaller, because we all need things from, like, we need this from Afghanistan, we need this from Russia, we need this from Japan just to make the car. Like, if we don't have the chip, the car can't run. That's what we're starting to realize. And that's why 5-6 years ago, we were trying to be self-sufficient and be more nationalistic. That's not a bad term. It means taking care of your own house before you expand. But now that as other countries are looking to expand, we see other things on the horizon. That brings us to our other world story, or our final world story, which is the International Court. This went under the radar, and I had heard about this, but the International Court, which is really a joke, the ICC, they issued a war crimes warrant for Putin. Right? They did it last month. I didn't hear any coverage of it. I heard about it just in passing this week, and I'm like, what's that about? But the real hidden story about this, and we talked about that last week, it's more about what's happening in August with the trip, and if these the BRICS
Africa.
nations, South Africa. Thank
Durban.
you. In Durban, right? And let me share that other image there. This is the one we shared last week, and then we try and blow it up. But you can see that they're going to. Let's see. It won't zoom. Thank you so much. There.
Just use your fingers and just do this.
You guys use your fingers. But in that really small text, which I can't zoom in, sorry. So let me drop out of that. But it says, watch last week's episode. In August, the BRICS leaders are supposed to meet in South Africa. And one of those things that they're going to launch is a new world currency, an alternative currency, probably backed by some basket of things, either their currencies, commodities, or a mixture. But gold. The important thing is August, that's going to happen. And if the leaders are going to gather there, that means Putin must leave Russia and go to South Africa, which leaves him susceptible to an international arrest. That's why they issued this. Why this is going to happen, I don't know. Maybe they changed the location of the meeting. We'll see. Yeah. But that's something to think about. Patrick, I see you're in agreement there. What are your thoughts?
August seems to be a pretty big month in terms of a lot of things. Yeah, like we have been expecting a good rally around that time. We're expecting Litecoin happening around that time. We're expecting a lot of fun stuff to come out with CBDC structures in July. So I don't know. It could be a fun month in August. We're going to be busy in August is what I'm predicting.
Doing any comments there?
Yeah, it just seems like a polarizing tactic. Right? Just to close some doors for them, and to get alliances lined up. I kind of like your theory that you said is kind of to make him more vulnerable, susceptible to any sort of arrest. When he needs to travel or be at a world stage, or to prevent him from showing up, things like that seem entirely plausible. I mean,
you can make cases a distraction too, right? It could be like, look at this instead of this over here. I mean,
guys, this is not going to work. Who's going to show up and arrest Putin?
Well,
but what I'm saying is that they could make a big dog and pony show in August and then put the new currency on the back burner on the news cycle.
And he'll just wear his Chinese gold necklace that he just got and be very happy.
Yeah, I mean, he's the West's favorite bad guy right now.
Well,
he's
absolutely. They blame him on Russia, everything, right? But as you mentioned about China and the necklace, one last thing, we didn't even have time to talk about it, but this leads into our next section where I don't know if you guys heard, but China last week, they increased their debt ceiling, or they launched a lot more credit for their people, which seems to be leading towards more purchases of gold and silver, because they really like those sorts of purchases and storing their wealth in China. So as we look at the next story,